Good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome to Drag Against AIDS in the Indianapolis Bag Ladies program hosted by Indie Pride and Indie Pride's Education Series. We have Kara Chinn, and my name is Stephen Lane. I am the chair for the LGBTQ Services Committee for the Indianapolis Public Library and a proud member of the Indie Pride Education Committee. I'd like to welcome those viewing our program on Zoom, on Facebook Live, and watching the replay of this program. We are viewing, if you are viewing on Facebook, please take a moment to like this video and share it so others can join the virtual event as it's going. The Indie Pride Education Series is sponsored by Ball State University, so thank you to Ball State for their support of Indie Pride educational programs. For our program this evening, we will have opening remarks by none other than Pollyanna of the Indie Bag Ladies. Then we will have our guest speaker, Kara Chinn. Full disclosure, we were in the public history program together at IUPUI, and she's awesome. Following the presentation, there will be a 15-minute Q&A. So please input your questions via Q&A function on Zoom. And we will only respond to questions in the Q&A section on Zoom. You can input your question at any time during the program. Now, we will have our opening remarks from Pollyanna.
Hello, my name's Pollyanna Parker, Bag Lady Queen 2017 and current Bag Lady Coordinator. The Indie Bag Ladies have been actively helping out our community for over 40 years, from ASOs such as Damien Center and Step Up, to the Indiana Youth Group and the Little Red Door Cancer Society, to name a few. Why I personally got involved in the Bag Ladies was that after riding the bus for several years, I had formers reach out to me to throw my hat in the ring, and I was also searching for a way that I could give back to the community. So I kind of really felt led from the good Lord above to throw my hat in the ring. And also, I truly wanted to help break down that stigma of HIV for those of us living with it in the community. I also enjoy entertaining. Hello, I was in show choir, band, and choir, triple threat, in high school. And I also enjoy encouraging others to give back to good causes. Our speaker tonight is the digital image curator for the Encyclopedia of Indianapolis. During her master's program for public history, she focused on the Indie Bag Ladies. That's awesome. Last year, she coordinated a presentation of Dragtivism at the Indiana Historical Society. This program brought together the Indie Bag Ladies, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and Low Pone. Each organization demonstrated how they use drag as a method of activism. Without further ado, please welcome our speaker for Drag Against AIDS in the Indianapolis Bag Ladies, Miss Kara Chinn.
Hi, everyone. All right, let me get my PowerPoint up, and that way everybody can see all the good stuff I got for you guys. So today I'm going to talk about a wonderful group of drag queens, the Indianapolis Bag Ladies. But before I begin discussing the impact the Bag Ladies had on Indianapolis and the AIDS community here in Indianapolis, I need to set the stage a little bit. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS, first emerged in the United States in 1981 among gay men. This was the same year that Ronald Reagan ascended to the US presidency, and in that same year, his rise to power was part of the triumph of what was called religious conservatism, and this would define much of that 1980s in America. In this political climate, gay men were blamed for contracting AIDS through their behavior, ostracized from mainstream society, and found few avenues for support. This included no financial, medical, political, or personal support from either federal or local government bodies. Cases of a rare illness were being reported in what was considered previously healthy homosexual men, often those who lived in large urban centers such as Los Angeles or New York City. By early June of that year, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention published their Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, where they described an atypical lung infection, pneumocystis pneumonia, that had infected 5 men in Los Angeles. This publication became the first official reporting on what would become the AIDS epidemic. In July, the New York Times reported 41 gay men had been diagnosed with Kaposi sarcoma, an uncommon type of skin cancer, in New York and California. By the end of 1981, 270 cases of this severe immunodeficiency had been reported. Of those, men. The connection between the gay community and this new disease led to the creation of what sociologists call the first paradigm, AIDS as a gay plague. Because of this early connection with the gay community, the new disease was quickly named GRID, or gay-related immune deficiency. This stigmatized name for the new disease added to an ongoing and intense discrimination against the gay community. People who had already saw homosexuality as a social evil now had something tangible to refer to when they were discriminating against gay men and denouncing the homosexual identity. The fear of the gay population only increased across the United States. Furthermore, the federal government took few positive steps and actions to combat the rising number of cases, and instead only fueled the fear by passing laws that attempted to limit homosexual interactions. Although initial cases of AIDS had been identified in the largest cities in the United States due to dense urban centers and large gay communities, it quickly became a nationwide disease. The state of Indiana reported the first 6 cases by 1982. The lives of those within the gay communities of Indiana were influenced because of this idea of gay plague and discrimination, making it nearly impossible for Hoosier gay men to be open about their medical issues and receive the help they needed. 559 confirmed cases of AIDS had been reported in Indiana by 1988, but doctors believed that most HIV and AIDS cases were going unreported or undiagnosed. In response to this epidemic, gay men and women across the country came together to care for one another and to protest that more attention needed to be paid to this disease by politicians in the medical profession. The history of AIDS activism is a major element in understanding AIDS and in the history of the United States. The AIDS epidemic and its connection to the gay community created stigmatized groups that actively fought against hate as well as fought for the lives of people with AIDS. Between 1981 and 1955, through a direct service approach, the Indianapolis Bag Ladies were able to institute medical change in Indianapolis regarding AIDS, and their history fills a gap of AIDS activism in the United States. The Bag Ladies' impact has reached a wide spread of those affected with HIV and AIDS through service and fundraising. They have been able to do all of this with the fun spirit of Camp Drag that allowed them to be open and straightforward about the new disease affecting the gay community locally and nationally. Now let's look at the beginning of the Bag Ladies. As a last-minute Halloween plans in 1981 turned into a community effort to assist those with AIDS by 1982, the Bag Ladies changed the face of the AIDS crisis in Indianapolis. It all began in October 1981 when Josh Irish, a member of the Indianapolis gay community, decided not to have his annual Halloween party, but a group of the usual guests decided to throw their own. Kobe Palmer, Gary Johnson, and Ed Walsh teamed up by renting 3 charter buses for their new Bag Ladies bus. Invitations were sent out on little brown bags to about 70 or 80 people. Instructions for the Metro Bag Lady Express were also sent to all. The group got dressed up at either Ed Walsh's house or at Kobe Palmer's card shop, Just Cards. Both were located in Broad Ripple here in the city. The first tour was all about fun as the group of drag queens boarded their buses to tour the gay bars in Indianapolis. The ladies packed trash bags full of camp drag costumes so they could change between stops. This often was about 5 or 6 times. Camp drag is one of the many forms of drag performed. It is well known for exaggeration, satire, or ironically bad taste. For the bag ladies, this often means dressing in exaggerated makeup and clothing while retaining some of their personal styles, such as facial hair. Being a professional bag lady called for smart shopping at local thrift stores, including Goodwill and Amvets. Kobe Palmer recalls the first bus tour being about camp drag and having a blast. The second year, the mission completely shifted. On a visit to the Gay Men's Health Crisis Organization in New York in 1982, Palmer saw devastation AIDS was already leaving in its wake and decided to turn the fun bus tour into what he considered a frontal assault on the plague. Palmer, a native of New York, heard about the men in his home state being affected by this mysterious disease and decided to visit. Gay Men's Health Crisis was produced out of an informal gathering of about 80 people in the living room of Larry Kramer to discuss the gay cancer and evolved into one of the first AIDS service organizations. This 1981 gathering sought to raise money for research and awareness about the new disease. Gay Men's Health Crisis would end up being one of the leading organizations in the national fight against AIDS. Gay Men's Health Crisis set up a makeshift hospice care facility aimed at providing medical care for those affected with HIV and AIDS. Their initial patients were not expected to recover, so Gay Men's Health Crisis provided comfort care to those in need. AIDS had just begun making its mark on Indianapolis. 6 cases were reported in 1982. The second bus tour was kicked off by Ed Walsh and Steve Willis, who wanted to build a tradition of putting the fun back in fundraising. The buses were again boarded by drag-clad ladies with large bags in tow in order to collect money and send to the Gay Men's Health Crisis, but also to create a war chest for here in Indianapolis. The Bag Ladies' evolution is best described in the words of their queen mother, Kobe Palmer. The Bag Ladies brought a lot of the community together for the first year because it was just a party and we were fun. But when the AIDS crisis hit, it really needed us together and really gave us a cause. We had a reason, a cause, and we fought for that cause. The Bag Ladies became the first organization, Bag Ladies became the first fundraising and awareness group for AIDS community in Indianapolis. Ed Tolucci, one of the original Bag Ladies members, remembers cases being reported like an avalanche, and that people would be out and about partying, and the next thing you knew, they weren't out. And then the next thing you knew, they were really bad. And the next thing you knew, they were gone. In just months, it went so fast. Several limitations hindered the accurate reporting of the cause of death for many early AIDS patients by doctors or in obituaries. Firstly, AIDS was a highly stigmatized disease. Therefore, many individuals wanted to distance themselves for their own safety or desire not to be targeted as an AIDS patient. Secondly, due to limited knowledge of AIDS, the true cause of death was often overlooked because many people with AIDS died after contracting an opportunistic infection and the connection was not immediately made. This made it difficult for mainstream news to recognize the need for a group like the Bag Ladies. But by early 1982, the Bag Ladies saw its true purpose and turned the organization to a fundraising and awareness for AIDS research, care, and prevention. The Damien Center. The Indianapolis Bag Ladies took their fight against AIDS further than simply fundraising. One of the ways that they impacted the life of people with AIDS in Indianapolis was through direct service. Although these programs were often staffed by unlicensed caregivers, they were able to provide great assistance to people with AIDS through a direct service approach. The list of direct service initiatives provided by the Bag Ladies included a buddy house that housed AIDS patients, a buddy system that paired people with AIDS with buddies that could mentor them or be a friend, the Damien Center that provided care and service for AIDS patients, and the Safe Sexx campaign. Today, for this talk, I'm just going to talk about the Damien Center and the Safe Sexx campaign led by Nurse Safe Sexx. Members of the Bag Ladies were personally affected by the AIDS epidemic and leading them to establish these programs. Much of what the Bag Ladies instituted was in reaction to what they were seeing nationally and locally for AIDS patients. We're going to go back on the national stage for a second. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, the United States has a well-recorded history of the rise of the religious right and conservative factions. This era began to focus on the rejection of the previous decades and the idea of free love and sexual freedom. The religious response to AIDS manifested in two opposing directions. One side saw AIDS as a punishment from God. Several religious organizations followed the lead of moral majority leader Jerry Falwell, who publicly pointed to AIDS as yet another reason to condemn homosexuality. He is quoted as saying, "AIDS is not just God's punishment for homosexuality. It's God's punishment for the society that tolerates them." These religiously based political action groups saw AIDS as a deserved punishment to people who lived the homosexual lifestyle, and those who had the disease should not be cared for. Although criticism of the homosexual lifestyle persisted, the other response to the AIDS epidemic was by mainstream religious organizations called for the care and compassion towards those affected, saying that it was the religious organization's humanitarian right and Christian duty to care for them. Both sides of the argument rejected homosexuality, though, but the religious founders of the Damien Center were able to use their sense of compassion and Christian duty to work with the Bag Ladies in establishing. The Damien Center is the longest sustaining and most influential project of the Bag Ladies. The center was named after late 1800s Roman Catholic priest Joseph Damien de Veuster, who dedicated his life to caring for the lepers who were banished to the island of Molokai, Hawaii. The Damien Center aimed to mimic his work by overcoming stigma and fear placed on those with the disease, and instead caring for them and showing compassion. This project was brought to fruition through an unlikely team. The Indianapolis Bag Ladies were represented by a member named Daryl Arthur. The Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Indianapolis was represented by Monsignor Gettelfinger, and the Episcopalian Diocese of Indianapolis was represented by Reverend Earl Connor. The idea for a facility that could provide testing, coordinate care for people with HIV and AIDS, house a food pantry, and more had been floating around within the Bag Ladies organization for a while. Arthur had been struggling to make the facility a reality for a few years before he used his connections to gain success. He knew that the Catholic Archdiocese owned a building once used for a Catholic grade school located on Pennsylvania Street. With the assistance of Reverend Earl Connor, Arthur convinced the Catholic Archdiocese to let them use the facility. The Damien Center officially opened in June of 1987, housing 4 AIDS-related community groups, including the Buddy Support System, People with AIDS Coalition Newsletter, Marion County AIDS Task Force, and the Bag Ladies. Their official purpose stated that the Damien Center provides and coordinates services for persons living with or affected by HIV and AIDS in our community, and actively advocates for just and compassionate response to their needs. In addition to care coordination, the Damien Center also provided AIDS patient and family support groups, a library of educational tools. By 1989, the Damien Center hosted 8 different support groups, each that focused on a different aspect of how the AIDS crisis was affecting people. Each of these services were provided without the consideration for the participants' ability to pay. It was the first organization for centralized care and services for those affected with HIV and AIDS, in Indianapolis. The Bag Ladies focused much of their fundraising efforts towards the Damien Center and served as its first volunteers. The relationship between the Damien Center and the church began to sever following a disagreement over condoms in 1992. Condoms were seen as the best method to prevent the transmission of HIV as well as other STDs. The Damien Center had not permitted condoms to be passed out openly, but on the center's premises due to the relationship with the Catholic Church. Condoms, like all contraceptives, were frowned upon in the Catholic Church community. Condoms did not a traditional family lifestyle of sex exclusively inside marriage and for the purpose of procreation. And because of this belief, contraceptives promoted sexual promiscuity. A vote to allow condom distribution passed with an 8-7 ruling, but it called into question the relationships of the center to the Catholic Church. This vote followed a moral questioning of condom distribution by Father David Coates, a member of the Damien Center board, after he saw them being passed out at the Indiana Black Expo exhibit sponsored by the center's Project Outreach. This caused Project Outreach to temporarily halt the distribution of condoms. Damien Center staff warned the board that a policy banning condoms would limit the important ministry of the Damien Center staff to prevent HIV infections through education. During a 3-hour board meeting, some suggested that the only way for the center to maintain its vital community role was to cut ties with the church. In 1992, the vote allowed condoms to be passed out during the Damien Center sponsored programs as long as they were off-site. This solution made neither side happy and eventually led to the dissolution of the relationship between the Damien Center and the Catholic Church. Both Project Outreach and the Indiana HIV Advocacy Program wished to move from the church-controlled facility because they saw the importance of connecting counseling to condom distribution. Executive Director of the Damien Center, Gordon Chaston, knew that the center would suffer if these programs were housed elsewhere. The issue also ultimately caused the Damien Center and the other AIDS service organizations to move to their current facility, not controlled by the Catholic Church, allowing them to carry out business as they saw fit. This facility is in active operation at 26 North Arsenal Avenue here in Indianapolis. The Damien Center continues to provide education, community, and healthcare for those affected with HIV and other STDs. Condom usage was seen as the #1 prevention method. Education regarding the prevention of AIDS had been a priority for the Bag Ladies since their work began. HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, is spread through direct contact with the bloodstream. The most common of this transmission method is through sexual intercourse. The alarming rate of homosexual men being infected through sex caused great concern for the Bag Ladies. There was no cure or vaccine for HIV and AIDS, so prevention was the best method in eradicating this disease, or at least controlling it. And one of the Bag Ladies in particular saw a need to educate the community practices. Nurse Safe Sexx and Who's Your Mom were two characters developed by Bag Lady Ken King in order to spread awareness and safe sex practices within the gay community. Safe sex practices included always wearing a condom, using lubricant, knowing the HIV status of your partners and yourself, and getting yourself tested. Nurse Safe Sexx was born out of a Bag Lady bus tour and became an instant hit. Visiting gay bars and promoting safe sex practices was the initial goal of the project. However, it was difficult for her to have an impact in this form, while the high camp gender slam drag, as she described it, certainly caught people's attention and made education fun. A lot of people were simultaneously afraid to get too close or be seen in images with Nurse Safe Sexx due to the negative stigma associated with AIDS. The idea of creating posters was only successful after a struggle to find someone to pose next to Nurse Safe Sexx. Most refused to the offer to pose in posters for fear of being connected with AIDS. They didn't want anyone to think that they had the disease. As you can see in this poster, the model's face didn't show, but the information about AIDS and prevention was shared, a success for the campaign. The real-life character of Nurse Safe Sexx was soon caricatured and featured in many Indianapolis gay newspapers, including The Mirror, The Word, Newark's News, and others. In collaboration with Richmond, Indiana-based cartoonist Rick Moore, Ken King created the Nurse Safe Sexx comic strip. These comics featured an array of characters, some based on other bag ladies, and some were made up to represent larger ideas. For example, John Q. Public represented the ignorance of the general American population when it came to HIV and AIDS. In other cartoons, Nurse Safe Sexx reminded men to use protection during sex. These cartoons allowed the voice of Nurse Safe Sexx to travel further and reach a wider audience. Both Moore and King decided not to copyright any of the cartoons, so that way they could be reprinted and used by other organizations in an effort to only further spread that message. She was able to promote local AIDS service organizations by letting readers know where they could get help if needed as well. Beyond the comic strip, King also wrote a newspaper column. The Nurses Report was featured in The Works. This column discussed a large array of topics that discussed current gay health concerns, primarily AIDS and safe sex, but other information as well. These were a positive and funny way for gay men to get more information about AIDS. Often articles were in response to anonymous letters that posed questions to the nurse. Creating a community-driven educational column allowed the nurse to expand her community by leveraging an anonymity, this is a hard word, anonymity as means of generating a safe conversational space. Getting proper education on safe sex and AIDS decreased stigma and built a safer atmosphere for gay men in Indianapolis. The desire to remain anonymous for fear of being ridiculed or being a person of AIDS ran deep with many men. Who's Your Mom was created because of the hesitation for many to approach Nurse Safe Sexx. Who's Your Mom was portrayed by King's mother, Betty, who promoted the idea that gay men should practice safe sex for the sake of their mothers, who would be heartbroken to lose their son to AIDS. Far more people posed and responded to this character because of the more wholesome messaging and idea that these men were still AIDS-free. In an interview with King, he said that once Who's Your Mom became more recognizable, men would show up at Just Cards, where Betty worked, and when she noticed this happening, she began to initiate conversations about safe sex and how to get help if they had AIDS. This program saw great success because men who were originally too intimidated to talk to Nurse Safe saw comfort and relaxed fear that Who's Your Mom created. Nurse Safe Sexx and Who's Your Mom were not unique ideas in the world of safe sex education. Ken King openly admits to stealing many of his ideas from other organizations. The nurse-styled character was adopted from the Chicago-based organization, the Howard Brown Memorial Clinic. Here, Stephen Jones dressed up as Nurse Wanda Lust and visited men in the hospital that were suffering from STDs. This was before the AIDS epidemic began. Created during the 1970s, Nurse Lust was developed when men were being discriminated against by traditional medical professionals. STDs were running rampant through the gay communities, and doctors were often unaware of how to properly treat gay men or refused to altogether. Nurse Lust visited hospitals and patients in her short and tight-fitting nurse's uniform, a large, oversized clock necklace, fake glasses, a bright red wig, high heels, and a nurse's hat and hairnet. She was able to put patients at ease while also representing the support of the gay community. The positive messaging and cartoons were inspired by the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Their safe sex pamphlet, Play Fair, was created and distributed just before the AIDS epidemic, but it featured sassy nuns teaching men how to prevent STD transmission. Two sisters were also healthcare professionals, are credited with the creation of the first safe-sex literature created by gay men for gay men. These individuals took what they knew from their medical profession about STDs and transmission and shared with their own community. Sister Florence Nightmare and Sister Ra's Erection created a catalog of illnesses that were affecting the gay community. These included gonorrhea, syphilis, herpes, and mysterious forms of cancer and pneumonia that were lurking among them. On a serious note, the Playfair pamphlet also included a warning that we are giving these diseases to ourselves through selfishness and ignorance. The warning came from inside the community, cautioning other gay men to be careful because many gay men who were also healthcare professionals had seen the impact of selfishness and ignorance in their own patients. Although not unique, Nurse Safe Sexx proved that a campion positive safe sex campaign could be successful in a Midwestern city, which was a huge deal at the time because the sisters were out of San Francisco and Nurse Wanda Luss was out of Chicago, two much larger cities that weren't necessarily small and more conservative like Indianapolis. The safe sex campaigns have been crucial in the fight against AIDS. The Bag Ladies instituted their own successful campaign with Nurse Safe Sexx and Who's Your Mom? Safe sex campaigns are credited with saving millions of lives through their education of the public. These campaigns often not only featured education about prevention, but also assisted people with prevention by passing out condoms to high-risk individuals. The Bag Ladies story, through my research, has already taken center stage at two events in Indianapolis. The first was actually how I got connected with the Bag Ladies. The Indiana Humanities bar crawl in 2018 was centered around LGBTQ history in Indianapolis. And one of their stops on their bar crawl was actually a recreation of the bus tour. And you can see here in the bottom corner, see if I can move it. A historical actor actually recreated Nurse Safe Sexx and donned the nurse's outfit, and a lot of her, the nurse's language was repeated during this event. It was a lot of fun. The other is a three-part drag show that I hosted at the Indiana Historical Society. This three-part drag show, I worked with the Indianapolis Bag Ladies, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and their chapter is located in West Lafayette, and then Low Pone, which is another LGBTQ drag organization here in Indianapolis. This program was really great. We were really set out on a mission to show how drag could be used as a form of activism, which is kind of why I made the combo word, Dragtivism. In this program, we really wanted to show how each of these groups, although very different, having different missions, were able to use drag as kind of that initial eye-catching moment, so that way their message could really be heard by a lot more people. And it was a great time. I really enjoyed having the Bag Ladies on stage with us that night. The Bag Ladies were able to change the face of medical intervention for the prevention and treatment of AIDS in Indianapolis. The Damien Center was an organization dedicated to connecting people with AIDS to care and providing educational resources for the Indianapolis community. Safe sex campaigns were popular all over the United States and proved to be crucial in the fight against AIDS. Nurse Safe Sexx provided a fun and educational way to reach the gay community in Indianapolis. Although safe sex campaigns were met with hostility from within and outside of the gay community, the impact of Nurse Safe Sexx was wide-reaching. It wasn't our goal to do all of this, said Ed Walsh in an interview with the Indianapolis News, but something had to be done, so we did it. Creating these programs and organizations allowed people with AIDS living in Indianapolis to get the help they needed that would not have been received from other organizations. If you are interested in reading my full thesis on the Bag Ladies, you can access it for free via IUPUI's Scholar Works. The link is here on the screen. And if you have any further questions or would like to follow what I'm currently working on, you can contact me on Twitter or via email. I would like to thank you guys so much for joining me today to talk about
Kara, you still there? Maybe her screen froze, but honestly, that was such an amazing presentation. I'm glad we got to catch all of it before her screen froze. She'll probably come back in a second. So I just want to say thank you, Kara, for that presentation. Please let us show our appreciation for Kara in the chat and the comment section. And we also have the founder of the Bag Ladies, Kobe Palmer, with us today to do a Q&A. So now we will ask our guest speaker to address your questions regarding the presentation in the chat. Make sure to enter your question in the Q&A section on Zoom. If you're on Facebook Live, we'll get your questions over to the Q&A section too, so you can participate in the Q&A. And we will only address questions in the Q&A section, so make sure you get them in there. Of course, I think I should get the first question. Kobe, so glad to have you here with us. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure. It's my honor.
Yes. Can I ask you, what inspired you to create the Indianapolis Bag Ladies? How did the group form in those early years? Tell us the story.
Well, in the early years, it was just a party. I mean, it was just because the fact is that we wanted to party and there was nothing like it. So the first 2 years, we really partied hard. And back then, you have to remember, being gay was underground. You couldn't say you were gay. So it brought together a whole bunch of people that had the same feeling as family. And so for the first 2 years, that's what it was. The family got together and we had a big Halloween party.
It looks like it was so much fun. How can we get involved with the Bag Ladies? I definitely want to get on that bus. I want to go on.
All you have to do is call Pollyanna Parker and sign up every time October comes around.
All right.
Oh yeah, it's a good time.
Question for Kara. What inspired you to take on this research project on the Indianapolis Bag Ladies?
Yeah, so like I said, I was in a class during my time in graduate school, and we were working with Indiana Humanities, which is a great organization, and they really wanted to theme their annual bus tour around LGBTQ history in Indianapolis. So my classmates and I were sent on a blind search for anything and everything we could in local gay newspapers that resided at the Indiana Historical Society. And I just kept seeing this, this group pop up every time I would read through a magazine. The Bag Ladies are doing this, they're doing that. And, then found Nurse Safe Sexx, all of that. It was a lot of trying to figure out what this organization was doing, and really I fell in love with it, and I needed to know more, and I felt like it was a great story to share. So that's really what inspired me. Amazing
research. I mean, I feel like I learned so much, and being a part of the gay community, here in Indianapolis, it's so important to just know that piece of our history. So we have a question in the Q&A for Kobe. What comparisons can be made between COVID-19, the current response to COVID-19, and the HIV/AIDS pandemic?
When you leave the house, wear a raincoat. When you leave the house, put a mask on.
That is such a
It's the
really
same
good
thing.
advice.
People tell you what to do. If you do it, it doesn't spread. But if you don't, you're spreading it to everyone.
Mm. So there we go. That was amazing, amazing advice right there, and great comparison between the two. So we also have a follow-up question from Carly. COVID pending, what are some future goal events for the Indie Bag Ladies?
Well, we'll always raise money for AIDS. So until it stops, we'll always be there. And the thing is that now we raise money for the DIFA fund, which is a fund that gives money to all the kegs in the state of Indiana. Before, we used to just give money to the Damien Center. But when the AIDS Foundation started, it was made better to put it all in one fund and then to distribute it. Of course, we still give to the Damien Center Food Pantry and some of the other projects, but most of the money goes to the DIFA fund so it can be distributed throughout the whole state.
Awesome. And we got a question from Sean. This is also for Kobe. And it's about the Food Pantry Fund and assistance at the Damien Center. And he would like to know more information about the Food Pantry Fund. If you could talk about that a little bit more.
Well, the food pantry is open to not just the Damien Center. Other people tap it too from the other agencies around the city. They spend about $1,000 a month or more, and they always need donations. Anybody at the Damien Center that's HIV positive can tap into it. And right now they're looking to do a lot with gift cards, being that they don't want to drop food off. They'd rather just not be in contact, but they're always needing money so that they can give gift cards to everybody that needs it.
That's amazing. This question is from an anonymous attendee for Kara. Great original projects. Are you going to continue developing this story, or have you been inspired to learn more about other groups in Indy?
That is a hard question. I think that honestly, I could write a book on the Bag Ladies if I really felt like it. But there are so many great organizations in Indianapolis, whether they're drag organizations or not, that are part of that LGBTQ story. And I might not be in the position right now to write them or to learn more and share it with everybody. But honestly, especially through like programs like Dragtivism, where I was really able to get connected with other groups, I'm so inspired to learn more about them, at least from my own personal information. It was a really good time. I didn't know about them before I started that program, and I'm so glad that that was something that I did learn about and was able to share.
Yes, and speaking about your research, what would you say is the greatest thing you learned from your research? And what do you want the audience to take away from your research?
I mean, for the audience takeaway, I think the biggest thing that you can learn is look at your own community and see really where you can get involved and help. And the Bag Ladies, you know, other than helping their fellow community member, there was really nothing in it for them. And they were able to do so many great things. So really just any way that anybody can help, whatever you're passionate about, you know, they were passionate about helping those with HIV and AIDS. So they went and did it. I really think for me, the most fascinating thing I learned about was well, I shouldn't say the most because I like a lot of it, but it was just that connection between like the church and the Bag Ladies. That's a very, very, very atypical story. And although it didn't end up, where they're still partner organizations, getting the Damien Center off the ground was really great, and being able to work together, see past differences, and help those in need was really, inspiring, honestly.
That is awesome. I just love learning about how something that started as a party just kind of morphed into this thing where you're actually helping and serving the community and educating the community, but also in a fun way through drag. So Kobe, the Bag Ladies celebrated 40 years this year. So did you think that the Bag Ladies would go 40 years? And what did you do to celebrate this year?
No, I never thought it would be 40 years. But the Bag Ladies from 1982 until the Damien Center took over our projects in 1987, it was very crucial, the things that we started. And this year, because it was a virtual tour of 3 buses, and thank the bus people, the chairmans and everything, the bus this year raised $36,000 to the DIFA fund. And we are so proud and thankful for the people out there that donated and continue to support us.
That's amazing. That is so amazing. So Sean has a question for me. You're a well-known as a local historian, LGBTQ plus history here in Indy. I don't know about that, but thank you. Are you currently working on something? Are you sharing any of your knowledge on a platform like this? So that's a great question, Sean. So I am over the special collections for the Indianapolis Public Library. We are currently working on an Indianapolis oral history project for the LGBTQ community. So if you would like to know more about getting involved in that project, please go to indypl.org, and you can do a search through the search bar for Spectrum of Voices is the name of the LGBTQ plus project here for the public library. So hopefully we'll have those available through special collections and maybe through our digital collections. So thank you for that. So my research was on the history of drag starting in the 1930s and the jazz era of Indianapolis. And they did a great article in Indy Star on it. So hopefully, I would love to see like this, your project, Kara, like turn into a documentary of just like, including, both of our research is about drag history of Indianapolis. So it'd be great to just see this, 100-year history of drag here in the city. I think that would be so cool to see how our research connects with each other.
Yes, your project was really, really cool too.
Yeah. Let's see here. Kobe, what would you say is your greatest memory from the past 40 years? What is your hope for the organization in the next 40 years for the Bag Ladies?
Wow, I don't think I can remember any one. Yes, I can. The Bag Ladies, for my 65th birthday, threw a party at Talbot Street and raised $10,000 and set up the food pantry fund. I was overwhelmed. That's one of the highlights, but there's many highlights. I can remember the Bag Ladies when Wally Schultz passed away. You'd think there was a beehive. We brought photographs in, fluffed up the funeral home, did everything. It was just a great bunch of guys back then, and even today, that if somebody needs help, they're right there to do it.
Yes. Kara, this one is for you. So We know that you are researching currently with the Encyclopedia of Indianapolis. What are you looking to research next that is related to LGBTQ history, if at all? And can you talk about the digital Encyclopedia of Indianapolis?
Yes, I can plug that. I am working as their image curator. So I actually don't do a lot of like writing research. I do a lot more connecting some really stellar photographs to entries that are written by our staff at the encyclopedia, but also historians across the city and across the state. Think about a very, very well vetted Wikipedia, and that's what the digital encyclopedia is aiming to be. We launch in February, so get excited about that. I love working there. Honestly, it's so much fun. I learned so much about the whole city. Regarding research in the LGBTQ community, honestly, I'd like to do a lot with Low Pone. My fantastic friend Jordan Ryan over at the Historical Society has really done a great job in helping collect a lot of their photographs and things like that. So although they're still currently an active organization as well, learning about, kind of a different style of drag, theirs looks a lot different than the Bag Ladies, and it would be interesting to see how they are putting their stamp on that section of drag and things like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Kobe, have you ever been to a Low Pone show?
Yes.
You have?
Well, only when they've performed with the Bag Ladies. I've never been to one of their actual ones in Fountain Square.
Yeah, I got to go last winter. It was spectacular. I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. They're definitely very different, very alternative. Definitely, they have the beard. Like some of them have the facial hair, just like the Bag Ladies do, and it's a lot of fun. It's a really good time. For sure. Let's see. So this is to anyone. So in your opinion, I'll throw this out to Kobe first. In your opinion, what work still needs to be done to end the epidemic of HIV/AIDS in our community and across the world?
Well, I've been on the task force. There's 4 pillars that they're coming up with, but condoms is number 1, sex education is number 2, and PrEP is number 3. And there's also, they need to go to the source where it started, like needle exchange. There's so many things that they now need. They've done so much research, and from the very beginning, the Bag Ladies promoted condoms, and now PrEP is here, and they need to get to the source of where it really is. It's a very touchy situation on how to do that.
Absolutely. Kara, what do you think?
I would have to agree with a lot of what Kobe said. I think being realistic about why it's spreading still, why it's still around, and really being able to not just get rid of symptoms, but more of that foundational element is really key. So again, just agreeing with a lot of what goes.
Yeah, absolutely. If there are any more questions out there, we still have some time left, so please type your questions in the Q&A. So Kobe, can you just take us back to that very first bus tour? Like, what was it like on that bus from your memory?
It was wild, fun, and the bars didn't know what to expect when all of a sudden 30, 40 Bag Ladies came in different costumes. And I will say one thing, back then we were really outrageous when we went in there, and there was no bars attached to it. I mean, everything was so different. But it started as just as a fun party, and every time we did it, it got more and more fun. And the best quote from everybody was, "Oh my God, I look like my mother."
That's
That's
amazing.
funny.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. Any other questions out there? Kobe, what have you been doing these days? How have you been
Well,
keeping yourself busy?
you know, I run a flower shop, so it's only me now because the fact is that I can't have people around that may infect me. So it's been quite, it's really hard. People don't realize what this virus is doing to small businesses.
Yeah, I bet. And Kara, go ahead, Kobe.
And the thing now that everybody's home, you know, when they all go back to work, we're all going to miss the joggers every morning. And the yards are just phenomenal. Christmas decorations where I live is just phenomenal because everybody's home and all they have to do is work around the house.
True.
Right. Kara, any final thoughts before we close it out?
No, I don't really have any final thoughts. Thank you, though.
No, I mean, thank you. I mean, this research was amazing. Your project, I think, just really illuminates this history that is just so important. And it really makes me appreciate, what the Bag Ladies are doing now even more. So yeah, it would be awesome to get dressed up and go out on the bus tour when we can get back together. I'm ready for this vaccine.
We have to experience it at least once.
Yes. So I want to thank you all for joining us for Drag Against AIDS, and the Indianapolis Bag Ladies with our guest speaker today, Kara Chinn. Thank you to Kara for joining us and sharing this important research. This program is hosted by Indie Pride in the Indie Pride Education Series, so look out for more. And it is sponsored by Ball State University. If you would like to support the Indie Bag Ladies and their work, please visit their website at www.indiebagladies.org. Again, that's indiebagladies.org. And please take 2 minutes to complete our education series survey to help support our program planning for 2021. You'll find the link to the survey in the chat and sent to your emails following the program. At the end of the survey, there is a chance to win $25 from Baby's Restaurant. They are really delicious. I hear the milkshakes are really good. I haven't tried one yet. So thank you everyone for joining us and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Kara. Thank you, Kobe, for being here.
Well, thank you. I'm honored, really.
Yes, yes.